All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure when everyone is watching this, but welcome to the Schoology training. We are doing our Getting Started for Advanced Users training today. I'm so glad you guys could be listening to this. This is the first step. Hopefully I keep you throughout the hour of our training today. I'm sorry I couldn't meet with you all today, but hopefully it's a little bit of a new experience for me as well. But hopefully this is a great way for you all to learn sort of asynchronously. The best recommendation for doing this training from my side would be to make sure that you can see my screen on one side of, if you're using one monitor, just one side of your screen. If you have two, even better. And then make sure that you're also logged into your enterprise account as well. So that's going to be really helpful moving forward with the training. As much as possible today, I'm really going to encourage you to just hit pause on the training today, jump into your own Schoology account, and to try out as many of the things as I show you today as you can. That's going to be really the best way to retain as much of the information as possible. And make sure that obviously you can hear me loud and clear, and I'm looking forward to feedback on how this goes. So we are training today on our this is our Getting Started for Advanced Users training. Just to introduce myself so it doesn't sort of feel like a strange empty voice on the other side of the recording today. My name is Sarah Viner. I'm a professional training specialist here at Schoology in New York. I am based in London. I'm based in New York, but I'm from London originally. Now, usually I'd say that if I'm saying anything too quickly, please go ahead and tell me to repeat myself or rephrase in a different way. So I'll just focus on not using too many Britishisms today. And if at any point you need something to be repeated, you can just hit rewind. So that's always helpful. And my background is also in education. So I started by teaching preschool, and then went up and taught high school, and from there started teaching middle school. So both at private, public, and charter schools. So a bit of a range to share with you, and hopefully some really awesome information from some of the teachers that I've actually worked with here at Schoology in all of those different schools that I've been training, doing really incredible, innovative things. So hopefully some good examples to share with you all. And I've just got a few slides to share with you today. This would usually be a little bit more interactive, but just to give you sort of a good standpoint and sort of a mindset to get here. Schoology, with that slightly joking but not really phonetic understanding there, just in case anyone's struggling to pronounce it. I know it's tricky. We're a learning management system. And so the idea is that we're going to house all of the tools that you need across the school to be able to create really amazing, engaging content for your students, to design out all of those lessons that you're going to be teaching, and then most importantly, to actually assess your students' understanding. What are they getting out of it? How are they doing in your courses? And just as a nice visual to share a little bit more with you, this is the way I really like to think of Schoology, as sort of sitting in that central hub position. The idea is that we're bringing in all of the different facets that you need to drive your classroom and the learning in your students. So your courses and content are going to be brought in. The student participation feature is huge. I'm going to show you a little bit of both sides, getting students engaged, and then actually sharing out those resources with other teachers within your, well, for now within your school, but hopefully eventually within the whole district as well. And then other things like actually being able to engage groups of students with extracurricular groups, also super important, as well as bringing in content from other third-party tools like YouTube and Google. And lastly, I know you've all played around in Schoology already, built out some courses, that kind of thing. So it is important just to recognize that there are these three different big buckets of Schoology. This is your resource section at the top, and that's essentially what you can think of as your virtual filing cabinet. So that's where you're going to keep all the different materials that you need to store, everything that you would have initially maybe tried to keep on a flash drive or in Google Drive, that kind of thing. You're now going to keep everything within your resource space. So you can pull in things that you're keeping on your drive already. And the cool thing about this is that you'll see everything is connected by these bidirectional arrows. The idea there is that everything is connectable. So you can push different resources directly into your groups or vice versa. And then you can also easily bring all of those different resources into your course areas as well. So lots of different ways to actually distribute those different pieces. That group area on the right-hand side, this is where you'll think about actually having the communication and collaboration in a non-academic space. So it's really helpful for organizing different groups that you might create, like a parent group, faculty group, different extracurricular groups with your students. Lots and lots of different uses that we see in the group section. It's important to know that there is no grading in groups, so it is a non-academic space. And then this courses area, lastly, is what we're going to spend most time on today. This is where you really have the option to bring in that direct instruction piece. So it's all of the information that you need to really give out important information to your students, to share as much as possible with them, and to make sure that they're understanding it really clearly. And then I'll also show you a little bit more about the organization features there too. And so without further ado, I do want to go ahead and jump directly into Schoology. So we're going to do this a couple different ways. I would love for you all to go ahead and join my training course for today. And the way that you're going to do that is just click this courses drop-down menu, and then you'll hit join. And I would love for you to all go ahead and find that access code. So in the bottom right-hand corner, this is my access code. It is not case sensitive, and it is not necessary to include the dash. So both helpful details if you're trying to struggle with those. Go ahead and enter that access code into that join course. If you haven't had a chance to do that just yet, go ahead and just pause the video, if you will, so that you can make sure you have that code saved there for you. And then once you're in the course, the great thing about this is that you're now going to be able to actually interact with me in this course itself. So I'm going to ask you at various points to post different pieces into my course, just so that you can kind of feel how it looks like, see what it feels like for a student, what it looks like as well. And I'll pretend to be a student throughout this as well to give you some good examples too. And so before we go any further, just to give you a quick view of our agenda for today. So I've just talked you through all of these pieces in terms of the Schoology overview. Hopefully a lot of that is sort of information that you'd managed to play around with a little bit already. There is a lot of information within Schoology itself that I'm sure you have lots of understanding of already. So if anything is repetitive, hopefully I'm giving you those kind of pieces that are for the advanced users. So even if it seems like you might know it at the beginning, I'll be pointing out some little tips and tools that you may not have actually accessed before. So advanced material features that I'll kind of just drop in as we go through the course today. So jumping over to our course itself, you'll recognize this 3-panel layout. It should be pretty familiar. That social media interface should be nice and intuitive. And that is the idea for both you as teachers as well as all of your students too. So they shouldn't need too much training in terms of when they come in here and they're trying to figure out how to actually navigate the platform. Hopefully it is really easy for them to jump in and around the different pieces. So this far left-hand side is your navigational column, and you'll see that we're landing on the materials piece here. Your update space is a really fantastic space to not overlook. So the updates is where you're going to be able to post out information for all of your students, announcements that might be helpful, different information that you're maybe worried that they won't actually have necessarily access to just yet. So the update space is where you can post things like, we're thinking towards the winter now, maybe tomorrow is a snow day. Make sure you read chapter 12 and come to class after the weekend prepared for discussion. And so on this space, I've now decided that I'm sending that out to my students. Maybe I'm actually going to give them a little reading guide. I can go ahead and attach a file. Maybe I want to include a link to something. So if I'm actually showing them that it is a snow day, this isn't the most formal way to share with my students that we're having a snow day. There's probably another system you have for that. But maybe I want to go ahead and link over to, the school announcement on a page. I can go ahead and use this insert content icon that hopefully you've all had a chance to use already. Anywhere you see that, that's your option to be able to insert links, symbols, equations, and in other places you'll be able to do this with images as well. So maybe you want to go ahead and just make a hyperlink directly here and show your students where the announcement came from. Something along those lines. So I definitely encourage you to play with that insert content icon. Then moving down, you might choose to attach a file. You may actually even choose to use this audio video record feature. We're going to come back to that a few times. It's a fantastic feature to use as much as you can. This is where maybe you have a translation. Perhaps you have students who need prompts read aloud to them. Never overlook that audio video record feature. It can be really transformative in your classroom. And this is a pretty important piece of information that I'm sharing with my students. So if I want to go ahead and mark this as an announcement, all I need to do is click the speech icon, that little speech bubble icon in the bottom right-hand corner. And then I can go ahead and hit this bell button. And that bell will mark this post, this update, as an announcement. So now when I post this update, you'll see that over here it is an update on my updates page, but in addition, it's an announcement at the top of my page. Really hard to miss that. Especially because even if when I go back to my materials page, well, that announcement is still hovering there on my materials page. So my students are really going to struggle to tell me that they didn't find this. It is everywhere, it's following them around. It should be really, really easy to spot. One other thing that I really like about announcements, about updates rather, is that you can actually create an update for a quick sort of temperature check of your students. So maybe I want to go ahead and give them a quick question of how is today's pacing for you? And you might not be able to answer this question yet because we've just started. But you can have too slow, too fast, or just right. And I can post that poll to my students and they'll be able to vote on it. So if you're on my screen or if you're in my course, I encourage you to actually post this. You can always go ahead and change your comments later if it speeds up or slows down for you, your votes. But always good for me to know because I know this isn't the last session that we're going to be doing together. We'll have quite a few. So it's good to know for me how fast to move for you all. And it'll show me that you guys are watching the video, which is great. And then lastly, within that updates page, you're also going to find the upcoming events. So this is where you can actually access your calendar. So right from this page, you can create events. Really easy for you to be able to jump in and start adding in any different pieces of information that you think are important that your students know, things like parent-teacher conferences, information that might be helpful for them moving forward that you want to get onto their calendar. And maybe that you want to get onto your calendar too. Great place to do that. So I encourage you to take a minute or two to just go in and play with posting an update or creating an event. If you get done with one, try both. If you haven't tried one of them, definitely try both and see if you can vote on my poll as well. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that too. So back to our general course overview. Again, this left-hand side, you're going to notice that there are a lot of different options on this navigational column. This is your materials page, and that's where you're going to be sort of thrown into as soon as you click on the course from your courses dropdown. And this space is where all of the different materials you post live, as well as any announcements that you have at your top of your page. I'm going to go ahead and remove that announcement for now. So as soon as you're done with it, you can get rid of it. You can also, if you post a second announcement, that first one will just be overridden. We are going to come back to the gradebook and mastery. There's one thing to mention on this members page. If any of you are working together with various other people within your school and you want them to have access to your course, or you want them to maybe help you build out the course itself, all you would need to do would be to click the gear icon next to their name and make them an administrator. So instead of remove it, we'll say make admin. And I can go ahead and sort of force someone else into my course if I'd like to, someone that I'm connected with. So let's add in Christina, that's my fake student. I can go ahead and make Christina a course administrator if I want to. So this is a really nice way to get someone else to collaborate with you. Once they're a course admin, remember they're going to have privileges for all of the grading. They're going to be able to add materials, edit any materials you put in, as well as give student feedback. So you want to think carefully about adding those student grades. And then one sort of more advanced feature that you may not have noticed before is that you do have grading groups on the right-hand side here. Now, we'll talk a lot more about what grading groups, how you actually will use them within assignments, but this is an incredible way to differentiate your learning. So your grading groups gives you the option to create different groups that you know might be necessary for this course. Perhaps you have those 3 or 4 students that every single day they finish earlier than everyone else. There might be information that they feel like is just really obvious for them, and they want to make sure that you're challenging them. So you might want to go ahead and create a group name for those students, something subtle probably, but something along the lines of extra time or extra work or gifted and talented users, that kind of thing. You can create a group name for those students specifically. Similarly, you could also create a group for students who you know have an IEP requirement or a differentiation need. And then if you did want to create a group for maybe a student or two who missed a certain amount of classes, always a reason to be able to do that as well within the grading group space. So definitely feel free to start playing around with those grading groups. You can do multiple grading groups at one time if you want to. So you don't need to just have each student in one specific grading group at a time. You can have multiple in there. All right, and jumping back into our materials page, this is where we're actually going to get into creating some of the materials pieces that we have. So we're going to start off with our informational items. There are two different kinds. I'm going to look at these different informational items, which include folders, files and links, and pages. And then I will go ahead and include some of these advanced material features as well. Next session, so this is split into two parts. Our next session, which is to be decided exactly which day that's going to happen on, that's going to be some of the more interactive and graded items that we have here. So I'll go ahead and jump straight into our materials that we're creating today. Wrong window, there we go. And to start with, I really encourage you to all use folders as much as possible. And you can see on my course, I built out folders already for a lot of different pieces that I think are going to be helpful. Quick note is that this Schoology resources folder and the building content in Schoology, if you guys do want to be course administrators, just let me know and you'll be able to save these folders over to your own resource area. But there is some fantastic information in here if you ever forget how to do something that we covered today. Or if you need to go to the support home for extra questions that come up. There are just a lot of links that will make it a little bit easier for you here. So let me know if you want to pull those materials out and I will make you an administrator for that. Additionally, if questions arise during today's session, please go ahead and put them in the parking lot at the very top of this page. I will visit that and I'll make sure that I have answers for all of those questions before our next session so that I can actually respond to some of those questions going forward as well. And do know that we do have 6 sessions scheduled already, so we do have a lot of different information to give you as the courses go on. So hopefully all of those questions will be answered in due time. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a folder, and to do that I'll select Add Materials and Add Folder. And very simple to start thinking about how you want to actually organize your course. A lot of you, I'm sure, have already built out lots of your folders already. This is an important thing to think about before you even get in. Naming conventions are very, very important for your students, especially for lower levels who are just trying to kind of wrap their head around how to use this platform. As much description as you can give them as possible, it's going to be even easier for them to actually get to know it. So things like Unit 1, English, if you are teaching a lower grade with more subjects rather than specific areas. You could create this as Unit 1 poetry. You could make it social sciences and start thinking about, the tutors, for example. I do encourage those colors. They're just going to be helpful in terms of referring to the folders later. It's easy to say, jump into the orange folder. And then in the description, one thing that you can do is use that insert content icon again. So this is the rich text editor with all of those formatting features. The inserting content icon, this is where you can go if you want to add in an image. And now this is going to be really helpful just to differentiate each of your folders from each other. So I'll go ahead and search a picture of the tutors. Perfect. And I'm just going to drag that picture directly onto my desktop. Really straightforward workflow. So I dragged it off the screen onto my desktop. And now when I select Attach File, I can just click that last image, and there it is. Now you're not going to want to make this too big. If it's very big, you're going to sort of skew the folders away from each other. So I recommend you making it reasonably sized, around like so is easy. And one thing to notice is that if you're trying to gradually release the material in your course, if you don't want your students all jumping into it and seeing absolutely everything in your course, for example, you just want them to see, semester 1, before semester 2, then you can always go ahead and set some date ranges on these folders. So perhaps I only want this folder to exist between the beginning of September and the end of September, and I'm going to make it available during that published date range. So now Before that date, my students aren't going to see this folder, and after the date, this folder is going to disappear. So they're not distracted by material that is finished. You can also just make sure that it only publishes on that start date. So if I'm creating, unit 3 or 4, and I know it's not going to start until, semester 2 or the beginning of December, I can just say publish on the start date, and then it won't show up for my students until then. I'm just going to go ahead and make it published for now, and I'll create that folder. So go ahead and pause the video, see if you can create a couple extra folders. You might have 1 or 2 that you want to make. And then once you're happy with the folders you have, I encourage you to just drag and drop them around where you want them to live. So my folder I'm going to put right at the top of my page. I just dragged and dropped it. Now the drag and drop can get a little old. So if you know where you want that folder to exist, I knew that I wanted it to be at the very top of my page. I didn't want it to go at the bottom. You might notice that there's this little dotted green line that shows up when you hover in between each of the materials on this page. If you click that dotted line, it's going to show you that same Add Materials drop-down menu, but in that specific location. So if I wanted to create something directly underneath this Tutors folder, I could click that green dotted line, and I could add in a folder right here. And that folder is going to live directly under the first folder right where I created it. So much easier than actually having to drag and drop everything around your screen. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that first folder. And the first kind of material I want to go ahead and add, if I select my Add Materials dropdown, is that I'm going to go ahead and attach a file. Now, a file is helpful if you have something that you've already created, perhaps a worksheet that you have, maybe you have a student work policy, maybe you want to upload your syllabus for your teachers, for your students rather, and perhaps even their parents if you're bringing those in eventually. All I need to do is select Attach Files, and I'll just pull in a file that makes sense. So let's see if there's something that makes sense in here. Now, a couple things to notice about this. You may not have experimented with this little icon on the far right, but this is your option to copy to courses. So if you're putting on a student homework policy, you're not just going to do that for one class. You have, 4 different classes that you're the administrator of, and for each of those classes, you know that you want your students to make sure that they all see that student homework policy. And so for that reason, you might just want to go ahead and click that clipboard that says copy to courses, and then you'll see all of the other courses that you are the administrator of. If you don't have any other courses that you're the administrator of, you won't see that copy option. Schoology is smart. It won't give you options that you don't have. So if at any stage you're looking for something that I have that you don't have, that's probably why. And then this publish icon, again, if you're trying to sort of hide that from your student until you're ready for them to see it, you can just go ahead and click the green button. When it turns white, it means your student won't see it yet. You will as the administrator, but it will be hidden from your students. Now I'll go ahead and add that. And I have a file in place. If it's a very large file, it might take a few minutes to just download into the space. This one was a pretty big one, so I'll come back and show it to you afterwards as well. But secondly, I'm just going to move on to the add link, which is really similar, but there is one little feature that you might not notice. If I wanted to go ahead and pull in some information about the tutors, maybe from a very credible source, highly referenced source like Wikipedia. Sorry, that was a reminder that we're doing our session. Then I can go ahead and pull that link in directly in the top space. And the title, I don't actually even have to type in. I can go ahead and click these 2 little green arrows that are looking like they're going around themselves, and it's going to pull the title of that Wikipedia article directly into my page automatically. I can delete or alter it from here. And then lastly, if I want my students to go to that website, I can decide to display this in a new window. So I don't necessarily have to make my students look at this one piece of information within Schoology if I don't want to. And if you're worried that maybe it's sort of a private site, things like Scholastic, some of those sort of third-party proprietary websites, they might not allow you to display their content on Schoology itself. If that's an issue, you can just click the little ABC icon, and it's going to say that it's going to display in a new window instead. So then no issue about lack of loading. And the same options you have on the right. And I'll go ahead and select Add. And so now I have those two different pieces of information. Hopefully it will be loaded by now. Awesome, there it is. This is a fun resource if you're thinking about, guided learning, blended learning even. And I can toggle into that next link from the top right-hand corner. And this is going to show directly on my site. So Wikipedia is allowing us to actually look at all their information. That's why I use that as an example, directly on our website. So it does make it a really nice way to not have your students, wandering around the internet, not being able to find the links that they need, being able to get onto all the wrong websites at the wrong time. Instead, you can really target them into what they need to be looking at. So go ahead and add yourself a link and a file. Feel free to pause if you need. I'm going to go ahead and open up that first Unit 1 folder again. And instead of actually stepping into the folder, I'm going to use this little arrow on the far left. When I point the arrow down, it's actually going to show me everything within the folder. And again, I can use that green line to create materials within the folder. So I don't even have to click into the folder to create those materials. I can do it straight from this Home Materials page. So the last thing we're going to add in terms of materials today is going to be our page. I'll go ahead and click the plus sign once more. A couple really cool things to mention about pages. I hope everyone has had a chance to use a page. It is essentially a virtual worksheet. So this is the coolest virtual worksheet you've ever encountered, hopefully. You really don't have any limits in terms of pages. It's really your creativity that is your limit. You can pull in any kind of information that you want into a page. You can embed different pieces of information and pull in as much exciting work as you want to straight in here. So I'm going to go ahead and name this page the Tutor Review. I do want to go ahead and attach a video. So again, my insert content icon in the rich text editor. You have two options. So for those of you who use things that are not YouTube, you can do this via image or media. You can pull in an embedded video. You do need to get the embed code for that. So if you're confused about what I'm talking about and you always use YouTube, ignore that. But if you're not, then you know what we're talking about. I'll go ahead and click YouTube. So I've attached this from the App Store. If you haven't attached it, I encourage you to do so. And then maybe I go ahead and I type in Tudor History. And this one looks great. Looks like it's set in sunny England. And I'll go ahead and embed this picture. And that's a video. So it's popped up as this yellow screen, which is slightly daunting. But the cool thing is that means it's worked. When I click on that big yellow box, if I click on the little landscape icon in the top right, top left even, you're going to see that I can actually preview this video from this page. And it will even play directly in that frame. Sorry if that was loud for anyone. And I'll go ahead and insert that here, and maybe I'm giving my students some descriptions, so watch the video below and decide on one topic to bring to our discussion. So I'm giving my students a bit of focus, but I'm not actually asking them to do anything. All they're going to do is watch the video. They're not replying to this page. They're not giving any more information. They're not, writing an assignment or anything. They're just viewing it and coming up with some opinions themselves. And then if I do want to bring in any other content, the insert content icon will allow me to do so. So I can build out equations, I can build out information and links, as well as using tooltips. So if I'm worried that my students aren't going to know which discussion I'm talking about, really nice option to be able to add a tooltip. It's essentially like a hover description. For example. Also really helpful for translation purposes if you're going to translate into a different language, or to just define some of that higher level sort of tier 3 vocabulary you might be using. If you're struggling to format your page, I encourage you to use tables. So if you're the kind of person that wants to neatly lay out different information that you want to put into your table, and you kind of want, something on the left, something on the right, you can go ahead and insert tables, and you can even make them invisible. So just by clicking on this border icon in the top left-hand corner, you can make the little borders disappear. And that's just going to format out the information that you have on the page really neatly. So I do encourage you to play around with that. Again, when you click on that table, you can go ahead and delete it using any of those table icons at the top. And then lastly, you do have a few more options in the bottom left-hand corner. So these are all still building out the page itself. You can add files, you can pull in links just as we did previously, but now they're attached to the page itself. You can also include any resources that you have saved here currently. And again, you can use that audio video record feature. So if you want to go ahead and read aloud the description on this page or translate it, this is where you want to do that. One other thing to mention is that you can pull in from Google Drive here. If you do have a third-party tool that you're using, like OneDrive or Google Drive, you can embed those pieces directly within a page as well. So things like forms, things like slides for your students to slip through, lots of different options there. And then we do have this space at the bottom of the page. Once you've created all of those different features of the page itself, you do have this options icon. And that will allow you to go in and individually assign this page. So we talked about grading groups previously. Those 3 dots are the option to individually assign to your grading groups. Really amazing information there for your students. You can now send this page perhaps as remedial work for your students. Maybe your student missed a class. Maybe one of your students finished early and you want them to be looking into our next section. This is how you can assign either to an individual student, or you can assign it to a grading group if you've created it. Once you start typing, that'll populate for you. And then again, you have the same options of publishing and displaying on a new page. So when I'm happy with my page, I'll go ahead and create that. And now you'll see that my page will sit directly under that spot right here. So you can see I've embedded that video and I've actually got the tooltip over my discussion area. This is a great place to be able to embed other third-party tools like Padlet, Quizlet, that kind of thing. Lots of options within Pages too. So definitely encourage you to pause the video now and play around with some of those other features. So I'll just pop back to our agenda briefly. We've worked through all of these 2 first sections, and I have talked about some of these slightly more advanced material features, but I do just want to walk through some of these little tips. We have about 5 minutes left or so, and I want to just share with you a couple extra pieces of information so that we are set to go into our next session when we meet again. So the first piece that I do want to share with you is the option to reorder your courses. And I know that you're bringing in all of your courses from eSchool Plus, so it might be the case that when you click on your courses drop-down menu, something like mine, you have a ton of different courses that are really getting in your way. Always good to make sure that you can scroll all the way through that and get to the ones that you need first. So for example, not very helpful that the course for today is literally the very last course on my list. If I want to go ahead and reorder my courses, it seems obvious. There is a little icon on the bottom right-hand corner that says reorder courses, that little arrow that points up and down. And from here, all I need to do is just drag and drop my courses to be in the order that I want them. So I encourage you to do this just to make sure that your courses are organized in an intuitive way. Also really helpful for your students. If you want to sort of help that executive functioning skills, if you want to help that grow, you can always encourage them to organize by time of day that they have their classes or days of the week. And just putting that in a slightly more easy to reach order is always a good tip. If you did bring in courses from semester 1 that now you're in semester 2 and you don't want to see them anymore, you can go ahead and reorder them that way too. If you're seeing semester 2 courses and it's only semester 1, perhaps you want to push those second ones down. A couple different options. So I'm sort of revisiting the different features that we've talked about. You do have a couple different options around assignment comments and submissions when you create assignments themselves. And I will touch upon a couple of those features as we get a little bit further into some of the details around that for our second session. But I do encourage you to start thinking about how you can actually use all of the different assignments, the discussions, and then the pieces that we just created in different ways. So I'll give you a lot of examples as we actually go through creating some of those different pieces further into this course. But it is very flexible, especially courses that use quizzes. You may not choose to give a lot of your quizzes within Schoology, but it is really helpful to be able to push in any information that you might need into a quiz space, because it does give you some extra options. So the last thing that I do want to show you is our media albums. These are a really great feature for a slightly more sort of social vibe when you're creating different materials. Again, I'm going to click my green line button and I'll drop down to Add Media Album. And I'll go ahead and name this something, perhaps like this is an icebreaker activity at the beginning of the year. Maybe I'm trying to gather a bit more information about my students and how they spent their summer, for example. I could say, your summer highlight. And the description might be something along the lines of post a photo, and you could say, or drawing, maybe students weren't taking photos, of something that you saw or experienced this summer that inspired you. Something sort of to get your students thinking and encourage them to share a bit more information with you, while also giving you the option to share with them. So the options on the bottom of this page, they do include that published option. If you want your students to be able to comment on each other's photos or additions, you can leave that enabled. If you click the speech bubble icon, it will be disabled. And then that next option over is where you have the option to decide whether students are going to be able to participate in this or not. So if you click this little icon and you make it gray, then only you as the instructor are going to be able to add media into this album. So you'll be able to add as many photos as you want. Maybe you're giving, a rundown of all of Henry VIII's wives for the Tudors, and you're just going to have images of each of the different wives with a caption on the side. You don't need your students to help by posting photos. This is really on you. You can go ahead and leave that gray. For this sort of example, this is social. I'm having my students interact. I'm having them participate, which is why it's that segue between sort of interactive and informational items. I'll go ahead and highlight it, and now my students can add media as well. Again, you have the copy to courses feature, and when I'm done with that, I'll select create. And then this is the last spot that I have the option to go ahead and attach files to. So I'll go ahead and click add files. And then within this space, I can include any sample images that I want. So I'll go ahead and add in some images that might make sense. I think there's a cute picture of a dog in here, hopefully. Might not make any sense. And I'll go ahead and open those images. You'll see they upload pretty quickly unless they're absolutely giant. This one apparently is not a real image. And I'll go ahead and add that media. And you'll see all of those different pictures will populate directly into my media album. So I've started this off with a lot of pictures that have inspired me from summer. In each image, I can tag it with a caption on the far right-hand side. So maybe I'm giving my students the opportunity to say, this inspired me because, or why they chose to post this picture. And then my students have the option to comment underneath each picture as well. So it becomes this really cool space to actually share each other's opinions. And your students are actually going to start understanding each other a little bit better as well. So similarly to discussions, you're actually getting to hear all of your different students' voices in different ways. And that means that it can be an incredibly powerful tool to really move forward with that engagement piece and creating a nice community within your classroom itself. So I do encourage you to use media albums. They are also available within group spaces as well. This is an interactive piece, but it is not graded. So just jumping back to our agenda, we are going to get into some of these other pieces. We've already talked a little bit about grading groups, folder options, reordering those courses. I'm leaving some of these different features around comments on assignments and actually submitting an assignment, as well as embedding Google pieces. I'm going to leave that for part 2 because it really goes in with our discussion piece. Next session, we're going to be focusing in on the interactive and graded items, and we are going to be looking into those grading pieces as well as some extra advanced features if we do have time for them. So I hope that you all had a chance to sort of pause the video, go in and create different materials as we went and play around with this as much as possible. Again, I encourage you to jump into this space, into our parking lot, for any questions that arose about any of the information we covered today. Just remembering that we do have a lot to go through for the next session as well. So if you do have questions about discussions, assignments, that sort of thing, just go ahead and save them for the next session because hopefully I will answer them in our session then. And I hope that everyone enjoyed this session and that it worked out. I'd be looking forward to the feedback as this was my first time doing a webinar to an empty room. So I hope everyone did well and kept up okay. And I do look forward to hearing from all of you. So thank you all very much for joining, and I'll look forward to meeting with you again soon. Bye-bye.